Admiral Zephon Corvinax, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Hegemony's 7th Conquest Fleet, was not easily impressed. After all, in his 400 cycles of military command, he had presided over the subjugation of 112 planets, the extinction of 7 species, and the forced relocation of billions. So when Lieutenant Grask timidly approached him on the bridge of inevitable doom, clutching a datapad and his tentacles twitching with nervous anticipation, Corvinax didn't even glance up from polishing his ceremonial dagger with a shredded enemy banner. "Sir," Grask said in the high-pitched lilt common to the Arvith species, "our scouts have discovered a previously uncatalogued species on a backwater planet in Sector 8721. Corvinax sighed. "Another one? That's the 47th in 3 lunar cycles. Let me guess. Primitive? Agricultural? Maybe flint tools if they're lucky?" Grask hesitated. "Actually, they call themselves humans. They have rudimentary space travel, nuclear capabilities, and a surprisingly complex media network. Our scans indicate individual units broadcasting visual data to large portions of the planet in real time." "Nuclear?" Corvinax scoffed. "Should I alert the Empress that we're facing apes with radioactive rocks? How terrifying. Perhaps they'll send a strongly worded letter." The bridge erupted in polite, rehearsed laughter. As usual, the Admiral's sarcasm was treated like comedy gold. Grask flushed a deeper orange. "Sir, the planet is fragmented. 200 separate governing entities. No centralized planetary defense." That did pique Corvinax's interest. "Divided? Delightful. That makes this almost too easy. Assign the 44th Infantry Division to handle it. No need for full force, just enough to occupy a few territories and declare hegemony authority." Grask wavered. "Only 1 division? This planet will be my 3rd wife's vacation resort by next moon phase. Consider it a weekend project." And with that, the orders were issued. Within 3 solar cycles, 5,000 elite hegemony troops, 200 assault vehicles, and 50 atmospheric fighters deployed across the blue-green marble known to its inhabitants as Earth. The invasion began with clinical precision. Their landing sites targeted major population hubs, with objectives to establish control, capture local leadership, and secure resource-rich areas. Corvinax lounged on his command chair aboard Inevitable Doom, sipping a bubbling drink from the crystallized skull of a previous warlord. It should have been just another conquest. Then silence fell on the bridge. "Sir," Communications Officer Prill said, her voice thin and tight, "we've lost contact with ground forces in the Northern Hemisphere." Corvinax barely blinked. "Atmospheric interference. Try again." "We've been trying. 6 hours. The last transmission was concerning." The bridge grew quiet as Prill played the recorded message. Commander Zix's voice screamed over blaster fire and explosions. "Retreat! Full retreat! They're by the Empress. They're inside the perimeter. How did they?" The message dissolved into screams. "What in the 7 hells is happening?" Corvinax roared. Tactical screens showed his forces vanishing, their life signals blinking out like dying stars. "Southern Hemisphere troops report catastrophic casualties," Grask reported, trembling. "Some are requesting emergency extraction." "From primitive apes?" Strategic Officer Nick spun from her station, pale and wide-eyed. "They're using our own dropships, Admiral. They've figured out how to fly them." "Impossible. Minutes," she whispered. "Not hours. Minutes." And then came the voice of the ship's AI. "Alert! Human aircraft approaching orbital perimeter. They appear to have retrofitted hegemony weaponry to native vessels." On the screen, An armada of patched-together human-made aircraft rocketed toward orbit, bristling with stolen alien weaponry, duct-taped for aerodynamics, and deathly efficient. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. The fleet scrambled for hyperspace. Hours later, Corvinax stood before the Emergency Council, smeared with soot, uniform torn, pride obliterated. He had lost an entire division to Earth, and no one knew how. The Galactic Hegemony's Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. For 12,000 years, its high arches, crystalline acoustics, and shimmering orbs of psychic light bore witness to proclamations of triumph, announcements of planetary conquests, and meticulously choreographed speeches from admirals like Zephon Corvinax. Victories were predictable. Empires fell like dominoes. Civilizations were absorbed, archived, and forgotten. But now, the chamber felt like a tomb. Admiral Corvinax, once a towering figure draped in victory robes, now disheveled, burned, and barely coherent, stood before the dais. His speech was clipped, drained of arrogance. "They reversed-engineered our dropships in minutes." A murmur rippled through the crowd, scientists, generals, and high counselors whispering like panicked insects. War Minister Thorne slammed a clawed fist on the obsidian table, her spines rising like an angered serpent. "Minutes?" she snarled. "Our vessels require years of navigational training, encoded access hierarchies, genetic imprinting." "They bypassed it all," Corvinax interrupted, eyes distant. "Human children were flying our craft by the second hour of contact. One transmission even showed a pair of what they call teenagers laughing as they weaponized a scout vessel's pulse cannon." "You're exaggerating," muttered Science Director Uvex, his respiratory sacs twitching with disbelief. "No, I am not." The Empress Solara herself, radiant with bioluminescent dignity, usually absent from day-to-day council matters, stood from her towering seat. "Then explain it to me, Admiral," she said, her voice soft but filled with the threat of eternal consequence. "Explain how a species with no planetary unity, with chemical projectile weapons, just handed the hegemony its first defeat in 2 millennia. The tension was unbearable. Even the psychic lights dimmed slightly, as if shrinking from the weight of history being rewritten. At last, Plexnar, Intelligence Adjunct 3rd Class, took the floor. Plexnar was not a military figure. His body was thin and wiry, blue-skinned and slightly translucent. He had 7 fingers on each hand and eyes like polished black coins. He adjusted his intelligence core sash, tapped a crystalline data cube, and activated the Council's central holoprojector. A globe appeared. Green and blue, oceans and clouds. "Earth," Plexnar began, his voice reedy but steady. "Home to the species known as humans. Biological designation, Homo sapiens. Carbon-based, bipedal. Average lifespan 70 to 100 solar years. Current estimated population, 8.2 billion. He gestured, and the hologram zoomed in, revealing a mess of borderlines, flags, symbols, and unfamiliar language clusters. "This," Plexnar said, "is where the confusion began." He pointed to a flashing marker. "This is NATO." "Is that their planetary defense force?" War Minister Thorne asked. Plexnar shook his head. "No, that's just one of their military alliances." Silence. "One?" repeated Empress Solara. "Yes, Your Magnificence, there are at least 30 others of equal or comparable size. ASEAN, CISO, the African Union, the Five Eyes, ANZUS, dozens more. Some are ideological, others geographic, still more are historical or cultural." "Cultural?" "The planet," Plexnar continued, "is divided into approximately 200 sovereign nations, each with its own governance structure, military hierarchy, and language systems. There is no planetary authority." How do they coordinate? Asked Uvex. Who responds to planetary threats? No one, Plexnar said simply. They improvise. Corvinax stood again, the embers of his fury returning. That's the point. We didn't face a global military. We faced a military. One of dozens, and they adapted to us mid-battle, which means we haven't even seen their full strength, Plexnar finished. Not even close. Impossible, someone whispered. It gets worse, Plexnar said grimly. We've been intercepting their transmissions. Public ones. They're not hiding what they're doing. They're bragging, boasting, competing. Another tap. Another stream of audio filled the chamber. Oh man, if those aliens showed up on our turf, we would have had them crying for mommy in 2 hours. The Navy wants to dissect one of those plasma rifles. DARPA's already working on reverse engineering that warp drive. Apparently it's cute, but inefficient. Science Director Uvex nearly fell out of his hoverpod. They called our warp drive cute? Indeed, Plexnar said, and inefficient. One human engineer reportedly said, and I quote, "Whoever designed this thing clearly never heard of quantum entanglement. We'll fix that." Whispers turned to shouting. Fix it? They can't possibly. They don't understand what they're dealing with. They do understand, Plexnar said. That's the problem. They understand everything, and they learn faster than any species we've ever cataloged. Strategic Officer Nix looked pale. Is that even biologically possible? No, it's not, Plexnar said. But you see, they've hacked biology. They don't rely on it. Their adaptation is cultural, technological. They've compressed centuries of learning into decades. They went from their first flying machine to landing on their moon in 66 Earth years. The room froze. From discovering heavier-than-air flight to becoming a spacefaring species in 66 years, Plexnar repeated. And how long did it take us? Uvex whispered. 6,000. Silence returned. Long, cold, terrible silence. And there's more, Plexnar said hesitantly. They have part-time soldiers. Excuse me, Thorn growled. Reservists, weekend warriors. Humans who work as chefs, teachers, or electricians during the week and train for war in their free time. Some of the individuals who repelled our forces listed their occupations as dental hygienist, plumber, YouTuber. You mean entertainers? Plexnar nodded. Yes, one of them streams themselves playing strategy games for fun. In their spare time, he's now studying our troop deployment patterns as a hobby. War Minister Thorn buried her face in her claws. What in the void are we dealing with? The Empress stood once more. Her voice was quiet, measured, dangerous. I want to spy on their world, she said. I want to know everything about this species. Everything. What unites them, what divides them, what terrifies them, and what makes them so damn good at war. Plexnar bowed. Agent Brill has already been deployed, Your Highness. And thus the Hegemony's most covert intelligence operative, expert infiltrator, elite saboteur, and master of 12 disguises, was surgically altered, given a name, a smile, and an Earth passport. His mission: learn the truth about humanity. What he discovered would break galactic history in half. Mission log: E-Day +3, Agent Trick Brill, Field Operative, Galactic Hegemony Intelligence Division. Subject: Species 8721, Designation: Humans. Cover identity: Todd Johnson, Nebraska, USA. Location: Metropolitan Area, New York City. Observation: humans have no psychic link, no group consciousness, no neural interface, and yet they behave like they're part of an invisible improvisational hive. No central queen, no command relay, just instinct, chaos, and caffeine. Agent Trick Brill had infiltrated over a dozen species across the galaxy. He'd lived among the crystalline slug philosophers of Takara Prime, shared hive consciousness with the Drenari broodmind, and survived a 4-year mission embedded in the methane-filled tunnels of the Titan-skinned Bracon Enclave. He had endured mind splicing, fluid interface rituals, and 6 consecutive cycles undercover as a sacred temple sponge. Nothing had prepared him for Earth. The humans were insane. Brill stood on a crowded street corner, wrapped in thick human textiles, jeans, jacket, vintage Nirvana shirt, and clutched a paper cup of coffee in one trembling hand. Across the street, a human wearing a hot dog costume was screaming into a megaphone about cryptocurrency. A woman in leopard print tights jogged by holding a cup of coffee in each hand. And above him, massive glowing advertisements flickered across the side of a towering structure, one selling dental insurance, the other a movie about alien invasions. The humans were selling dramatizations of alien invasions as entertainment. Brill took a long sip of his coffee. It tasted like acidic battery fluid with a hint of nutmeg. He would later learn it was called a pumpkin spice latte. Its effects were unholy. His heart rate had quadrupled. He could see smells, and his internal organ temperature monitor had begun blinking a warning light. Requesting hazard pay, he muttered into his coat collar, which concealed a subdermal transmitter linked to a surveillance drone in Earth's upper atmosphere. Brill's instructions were clear: blend in, observe, collect military intelligence. But that was proving impossible. For starters, humans were obsessed with introductions. Every interaction began with a barrage of personal location-based inquiries. "Where are you from?" "Nebraska." Brill had answered, an arbitrary region assigned to his false identity file. "Omaha or Lincoln?" "Yes," he said. "Dude, what?" Second, humans were unpredictable. They weren't governed by logic, efficiency, or even basic survival instinct. They drove metal boxes at lethal speeds while listening to music, trusted strangers to prepare their food, and deliberately paid to watch films designed to scare them. Their most celebrated intellectuals were comedians, podcasters, and a man who filmed himself in a garage explaining quantum mechanics using toy blocks. They worshipped innovation, but not through centralized research facilities or genetic castes. No, humans innovated by accident, in garages, dorm rooms, basements, and hackathons fueled by sugar water and bean juice. And worst of all, they had no fear. Mission log: E-Day +7 subject behavior baffling. Species displays attachment to quadruped fur creatures, classified dogs and cats, and converses with them as if they comprehend language. Additionally, they willingly submerge themselves in large bodies of water for recreation. Reckless, suicidal, adorable. Brill had attempted to join a group of locals at a barbecue. The humans grilled meat over open flames, consumed fermented liquids, and shouted over music loud enough to rupture a Drellian eardrum. A man named Dave asked Brill if he was into sports. Then, when Brill admitted he'd never heard of the New York Jets, began explaining Earth's most complex and sacred war ritual: football. Then Dave leaned closer and said something Brill would never forget. "But man, if aliens ever attacked, all this crap would go out the window. We'd unite real fast and kick their slimy asses back to wherever they came from." Brill froze. Dave didn't know he was talking to an alien spy. His tone was casual, not angry, not afraid, eager. The notion of alien conflict didn't terrify him. It excited him. Brill transmitted that interaction directly to Hegemony High Command. They were slow to respond. Mission log: E-Day +14 urgent report. Humans are not fractured. They are self-competing. They test themselves constantly through internal conflict, war, politics, economics, even entertainment. It's all iterative struggle. They have no predator fear instinct. When faced with overwhelming force, they escalate innovation. When they can't win with existing tools, they build new ones on the fly. At this point, High Command demanded specifics on weapons development. Brill changed tactics. He visited a place called a museum. What he found was horrifying. The museum was not sacred, it was public. Human children were led through galleries lined with relics of their own weaponry. Swords, muskets, tanks, drones, nuclear missiles. One glass case featured a timeline. 1903, first flight, Wright brothers. 1969, first moon landing. 2024, Mars sample return missions. 2025. Reverse engineering of alien propulsion systems projected. The humans displayed their own evolution of warfare, celebrated it, critiqued it, studied it in public schools. Brill was halfway through his data collection when he encountered a children's show explaining the aerodynamics of hypersonic weaponry through animated animals and songs. "They're teaching toddlers orbital mechanics," Brill whispered into his collar. Mission log. E-Day plus 17 critical. Abort mission. I repeat, abort. I have been compromised. Not captured, recognized. A human male saw my image on a news broadcast from the first invasion wave. Instead of restraining me, he bought me a beverage called beer and demanded to know more about our plasma artillery. A female named Janet offered to engage in biological exploration in exchange for shield frequency data. They aren't afraid, they're curious. What followed was his final message. Brill sent it from a place known as a sports bar, a convergence zone where humans watched territorial ritual competitions, consumed intoxicants, and hurled insults at digital projections. They've seen me. They know who I am. But they're not capturing me. They've decided I'm cool. They're inviting me to something called a road trip. One man just asked if I'd like to visit a secret base called Area 5100. Why are they all laughing? Why are they singing? Please, extract me. Wait, someone just handed me a cat and a beer. That was the last the Hegemony ever heard from Agent Brill. His signal went dead at 21:03 Earth time. 6 minutes later, a social media platform called Instagram posted a photo of a man vaguely resembling Brill's human disguise, wearing sunglasses, smiling between two blonde women, and holding a corgi under one arm. The caption read, "Alien Todd's in town, and he parties hard. First contact, Area 5100 bound." When the recording ended in the High Council chamber, no one spoke. War Minister Thorne whispered what everyone else was thinking. They captured our spy and made him a celebrity. Science Director Uvex didn't respond. He simply folded his arms, deflated his respiratory sacs, and muttered, "It's not fear. It's not pride. It's not aggression. It's cultural warfare. And they don't even realize they're waging it." The Empress looked up from the final transmission, her voice brittle with realization. "We have not conquered Earth," she said. "We have awakened it." The Galactic Hegemony's capital world, Valkaris Prime, glowed with cold fire as the largest military fleet in 3 centuries roared to life. Across 22 planetary shipyards, dreadnoughts bled into the atmosphere like vengeful gods. Carriers, assault platforms, antimatter lances, gravitational nullifiers, every weapon the Hegemony had ever perfected now stood aimed at a single planet, Earth. At the center of it all, aboard the Eternal Subjugation, Admiral Zephon Corvinax prepared for redemption. His golden command robes were gone, replaced with hardened alloy armor. His ceremonial dagger now hung beside 3 sidearms. His smile, once filled with arrogance, had become something colder. Determined necessity. He stood in the bridge's command well, surrounded by 17 capital ships, 500,000 ground troops, 2,000 atmospheric fighters, and every class of mechanized horror the galaxy could birth. "This time, we leave nothing to chance," he told his officers. "We are not here to pacify, we are here to end." Strategic Officer Nix, her voice tight with dread, offered one final plea. "Admiral, the Empress authorized diplomacy." "Perhaps diplomacy?" Corvinax snapped, his eyes glowing with fury. "With them? With primitives who hacked our encryption, hijacked our dropships, and made memes out of our war crimes? No, we bury them. We sterilize their memory from the stars." The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a supernova swarm. From Earth's perspective, it was as if a second sun had ignited, then blinked out in rows of jagged, moving darkness. Sensors lit up across the human defense grid, their newly rebuilt satellite array pinging alerts to every global channel. And yet, nothing panicked. The humans did not scatter. They coordinated. Within 10 minutes, every military base on Earth had received the alert. Within 15, cell phone towers, yes, cell towers, fired synchronized pulses into the ionosphere. The sky shimmered. The air hummed. Communications blacked out for the invaders. "Interference," muttered Captain Grask. "Atmospheric jamming." "No," whispered Nix. "It's deliberate. It's a defense grid." Corvinax stared at the tactical display. Hundreds of human-built rockets began rising from Earth. Not missiles, not military craft. "Sir," a sensor officer choked, "those are hobbyist rockets, amateur builds. Some have national flags painted on them. One has a smiley face." The Admiral sneered. "Ignore them." He shouldn't have. 17 hours of horror. The official hegemony records would call what followed the 17 hours of horror. Unofficially, it was known as the day Earth fought back and laughed while doing it. As the first wave of dropships pierced the upper atmosphere, they encountered human structures modified into energy disruptors. These were cell towers, jury-rigged with alien tech and fueled by reverse-engineered shield modulators. One by one, ships imploded. Not exploded, but collapsed into gravitational sinkholes created by basement physicists on Reddit forums. Corvinax screamed. "How did they even know where our atmospheric vulnerabilities are?" "They're using our science, sir," Nix answered, her voice hollow. "They're not just mimicking us anymore. They've improved it." On the ground, chaos reigned, but it was not human chaos. It was organized insurgency. The humans had abandoned traditional military formations. Instead, every neighborhood became a fortress. Suburban streets were lined with tripwires made from Christmas lights and garage-made energy barriers. Grandmothers with plasma rifles protected rooftops. Teenagers used drones to coordinate airstrikes. Children acted as couriers, zipping through alleyways with hand-drawn maps of troop movements. And worst of all, they're not afraid. Grask whispered. The voice of Earth, at 400 GMT, Corvinax's flagship received an open transmission from the surface. It was audio only, and it was laughing. "Hey there, space jerks. This is Bobby, Milwaukee Amateur Rocketry Club president. Me and the boys figured out your shield frequencies. Pretty basic modulation, honestly. Anyway, look up." Corvinax looked. 50 objects streaked toward the sky. "Are those toys?" Grask asked. "They're hobby rockets, sir," said the sensor officer. "They won't break our shields," Corvinax sneered. They didn't need to. The hobbyists had replaced their payloads with alien-enhanced antimatter warheads. repurposed from tech scavenged during the first invasion. These weren't warheads the way the hegemony understood them. They were upgrades. The first rocket, launched by a 16-year-old named Megan from Kansas, struck the merciless Victory, slicing the capital ship in two with a blast that ruptured the fabric of local space-time. She'd won her high school's science fair earlier that week. System failure. Back aboard Eternal Subjugation, Corvinax screamed for a retreat. "Get us out, now!" "Sir, hyperspace engines are offline," engineering reported, their voice panicked. "We're being cyber-attacked." "What?" "They're sending something to our system. Media files." "Sir, they've hacked us with culture." The bridge screens flickered. Then it began. A small, furry earth creature appeared on every display, batting at a ball of yarn. "Sir, it's a cat video." Then a human appeared. Red hair, sunglasses, trench coat. "Never gonna give you up." Corvinax fell to his knees as his ship's AI sang along. "Never gonna let you down." Hegemony systems buckled. Control was lost. Across the fleet, rickrolls detonated AI cores. Entire dreadnoughts plunged from orbit, infected with digital joy they had no defense against. "This is psychological warfare," Nix whispered. "The end of an empire." Corvinax's last transmission was brief. "They're coming. Nothing works against them. They don't just fight, they enjoy it." The Eternal Subjugation was torn open by a rocket launched by a community college physics professor and his daughter. It was painted neon pink. It played the Pokémon theme song as it hit. Aftermath. The Emergency Council met in the bunker of last resort, a chamber 13 kilometers beneath Valkyris Prime, reserved for extinction-level threats. Only 2 capital ships had returned. The survivors babbled incoherently. Soccer moms with plasma cannons, drones with emojis. Teenagers breached my firewall in 6 minutes. My commander was defeated by a cat meme. The Empress, her glow dimmed, turned to Intelligence Director Plexnar. "Tell me this is over." "It's worse than that," he said. He inserted a crystal. A hologram appeared. A human boy standing beside a science fair poster. "Hey, Professor Williams, I built a clean energy reactor using alien tech. We're gonna scale it to power the new interstellar fleet. We're taking a road trip to nearby stars. Should be fun." "Humanity's going spacefaring, baby." Silence. Then, "Your Majesty," whispered Science Director Uvex. "They beat us without using their best weapons, and now they've claimed the stars." 3 lunar cycles later, the Galactic Hegemony surrendered in Switzerland. On Earth, at a lakeside hotel conference room decorated with pastries, houseplants, and PowerPoint slides. The Empress arrived in ceremonial robes. The humans arrived in business casual. Judy Nakamura, UN Secretary General, said a red-haired woman offering a handshake. "Great to meet you. Love the luminescence. Natural or tech?" "We surrender." Cool. So here's the thing," Judy said, sipping coffee. "We're thinking no more conquests. How about an interstellar federation? We can totally trade tech." The Hegemony delegation blinked. "You want us as equals?" "Sure, diversity and unity and stuff. Besides, your guys are pretty cool. We've learned a ton. Plus, your warp drive's super cute." Later that night, Admiral Corvinax, rescued, healed, and now wearing khakis, stood with the Empress at the reception. He sipped bourbon and watched humans dance with former enemies. "They don't even understand how terrifying they are," he muttered. "They think everyone forgives this fast, learns this fast, grows this fast. In 10 years, they'll be teaching us." He raised his glass. "To the hegemony, 12,000 years of galactic domination, ended by a species that thought turning warships into shopping malls was a fun weekend project. Gods help the next empire that messes with Earth."